maybe even a little less than they were before. In that stat for me, that's what was reported. So I think we can expect that we're going to see a request for some increase in annual assessments to fund the COG. And I'll remind everybody that the Benton Franklin Council of Governments is the vehicle through which a great deal of state and federal highway dollars flow. Based on the stats I saw this week, for every dollar that Franklin County puts in assessments and other expenses to the COG, we get back something on the order of $24. So it's a good return on investment. That information and those stats will be available for anyone who wants to follow them up. But again, I do anticipate a request for a larger assessment to cover increasing costs. Municipal Advisory Committee meeting from the Board of Health and also the local decision makers meeting. Both of those really focus on the same issue, which is dealing with COVID. Nothing really unusual or outstanding about those, mostly updates on current status. Met with the Port of Pasco last week for an hour and a half or so on economic development. Let's see, last week we had a WASAC meeting also on the ARPA funds. I think Keith already spoke to that. Yesterday, I organized and we executed a 1 hour show on Kona Radio. Probably the lead epidemiologist, not probably, I would say the lead epidemiologist in the region is a Dr. Brian York, and he is with CADLIC, and he and I spent an hour just taking calls from people who had questions and concerns about vaccines. It was not so much pitching a particular point of view, but working to dispel myths and rumors, misinformation. A few stats came out of that were really interesting, and in the interest of time, I'll just touch on two quickly. One is that the challenge right now with COVID is not the number of beds, it's the number of medical professionals to treat people. If we had to, we could put up tents in a parking lot. We don't have the medical professionals, and as Dr. York reported, let me correct that. The CEO of CADLIC, not Dr. York, in a meeting this week reported that one of the real challenges that they're having is retaining and retracting these medical professionals. Some of them, I don't honestly know how many, are leaving. And he said that they're either going to places where the circumstances are more to their liking. He didn't say this expressly, but I took his meaning to be where case rates are not through the roof and the halls are filled with people going into the ICU or sitting in the ER waiting to get into the ICU. But he made it very clear that we are absolutely at a breaking point and that they are sending people as much as 200 miles away and making oftentimes as many as 20 phone calls to find a place to send someone who needs treatment. So for anyone who wasn't aware, the limiting factor is not beds, it's people to treat them, and we're losing those people to other markets. The other statistic, the second thing I wanted to point out, is that he said that we have lost 356 people to COVID here in the Tri-Cities since this began. He said out of those 356 people who have died directly or indirectly from COVID, one was vaccinated, 355 were unvaccinated. Thank you.
Commissioner Mullen.
So I met with Matt Mahoney on discussion about the Clotis Highway. Things there are going a little bit slower than what anticipated. I just have had several comments and complaints, people calling in on the condition of the road. Also met with the county commissioners from Umatilla County. They invited, I believe, all of us down to their fair and took a tour of the facility, and it was actually nice to meet other county commissioners from the surrounding areas and the different counties in Oregon. It was nice to put a face to all the names. And I know also they had asked if there was a possibility they could come up and tour the Ben Franklin Fairgrounds as well. And I think that's a great idea to try to get better relationships with our surrounding commissioners. So that's what I have.
All right, well, start with last Thursday was Ben Franklin Transit. We had a family emergency and I wasn't able to attend. Were you able to attend that? Commissioner
I
Mullin?
was able to attend about the first half of it.
Okay. Yeah, so what happened was my wife got kicked by a calf, broke her arm, and she was in there at Lady of Lords and was able to be seen, and they took x-rays. It was a little bit of a time consuming, but it wasn't overwhelming as far as people in the hospital. So that was our sort of our inclination there, but receiving emails, lots of emails from people that are urging us as commissioners to take a stand against the mandatory vaccinations for these people that are working in these healthcare facilities, because that is one of the reasons why they're leaving. Another reason why they're leaving is because the funds from the federal government is more lucrative than it is to work in the hospital. That's why we're coming up short with people. It's one of the areas that this is happening in. There is actually more money in sitting at home getting a check from the government than it is to work. So then Monday I did listen in on the WASAC. I was a little late getting on that, but I listened in on that. Everybody's trying to figure out how they're going to spend these funds. Went to the elections meeting yesterday. We got that, the first phase of that done. Got a 2:00 meeting today on that. I also attended the port meeting on Friday, and one of their main concerns was insurance and all their properties and the rates that the insurance is going up. And I'm sure we're going to be facing the same thing, and they're looking at changing their deductible in order to lower their rates. So this is something that I think we're going to be looking at for our properties also. So that pretty much sums up my week. So with that, we'll move into the closed record hearing.
Chairman, if I might, just before we delve into that, Commissioner Mullin, you said you were not able to be at the transit meeting for the whole time, and I understand that happens sometimes. Were you there for the vote on the question of whether or not to put a matter on the ballot for possible transit tax reduction?
No, I was not.
Okay, thanks.
So with that, we'll move into the closed record hearing, sub 2021-05 Spencer Estates Phase 4. At this time, I will open the closed record hearing. So Eric, please present.
Right off the bat, thank you for this intro. Staff noticed this morning that the resolution included in the packet was missing some pages. We've provided the updated version to you.
Derek, could you speak just a little bit more into the mic? Maybe
I'm
pull
sorry.
it closer to
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
We'll start this over here. The resolution provided in the packet that was presented to the board was missing 5 conditions of approval that were recommended by the Planning Commission and staff. Staff has provided an updated version to the board with those missing conditions. They were generally on these, the conditions are pretty almost standardized. So fortunately, it doesn't affect, but it is what's in the record, and the resolution matches what's in the record as far as the staff report and the recommendation of the Planning Commission goes. I apologize for that.
Derek, could you identify specifically, just so that we do have it as a part of the record, what pages in this package, what numbers under the conditions of approval, any way you want to describe it?
Yes, sir. The starts on page 8 or 7, sorry, starts on page 6 of the actual resolution. It's numbered as such. So condition 1 was there. It's 2. Oh, and I have a numbering issue. So
It's page 6, conditions of
approval, correct.
Yeah, page
So
6.
condition 1 was what was provided in the packet provided. I'm also noticing that I have a numbering where I have 2, so there's actually 7 conditions of approval. I apologize. There's been a lot going on in the planning department, and I don't know
Derek, I think that,
This is
sorry for
not
the
happened
interruption, but
before.
I think
Yeah.
what you have listed as the second number 2 is item number 3. So the number of conditions has not changed, just that second one should be number 3 instead of 2.
It currently goes 1, 2, 2, 4.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
So
thank God.
it's just a typo. The second 2 is a
It's
Okay.
got
3.
them all in there.
Okay, thank you. So the number's correct. When you make a mistake, you start seeing mistakes everywhere. So I apologize for that. And so condition 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 were added. Again, condition 3 is the specifics regarding septic requirements to the site. Condition 4. They didn't really, okay, there are none from, wait.
Derek, these were not listed in the package specifically as conditions, but they were in the other materials in the packet
In the s-
broader, because I recognize the language.
Yeah, the staff report provides the recommended conditions of approval as approved by the planning commission, and those are what have been put into the resolution. And
Okay.
that's what staff had missed
Just-
when we submitted the packet.
Just to confirm that then, if we've read and read aheads the material recommendations from the planning commission, and those have been adopted in total, no change. So
Correct.
good. All right. I don't need to read these. Thanks.
As mentioned, this is a request for the approval of subdivision 2021-05, a preliminary plat for the Spencer's Estates Phase 4. It's a preliminary plat to create 55 single-family residential lots. The applicant's Big Sky. The owner's Chubby Cherries LLC. The project is to subdivide 37.5 acres comprising 6 separate properties into 55 approximately 1/2 acre lots for residential use. Site is primarily vacant farmland with 2 existing residences and outbuildings that are located on lots 126-150-094 and 126-150-174. Residential suburban 20,000 RS20 is the zoning for the area. And the comp plan designation is low-density residential. It is located in the city of Pasco urban growth area. And that represents 2 to 5 dwelling units per acre. Here's a map of the parcels. That red box represents the entirety area. There's where the residence, one of the residences, there's the second residence.
And those both remain, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's the proposed layout. It's got a single entrance coming in, and then all the lots there will be no direct access onto Burns Road. They will all access on one of those interior streets and come out the entrance here, so. Sorry.
What's the road that they're exiting out on?
This goes up into, I want to say it's Quail Run. It's
Quail Run.
Burns Estates is what this subdivision up here is. It's called Burns Estates.
So is that Northern Road, is that Jaylene, or do you remember? It doesn't matter. It connects to the north and then goes east out to Kohler, correct?
Correct. So it comes up here. This is being finalized. They're in the process of finalizing this
Yeah.
section here.
It's not Jaylene. Jaylene's quite a lot farther north, but I see it goes out to
I
the
want to
east.
say it's Whiskey River.
That sounds right.
It punches through in the proposed final plat for this. Under state law, when you hit 30 units, you have to have a secondary access.
I was going to ask, one didn't look like enough, but
Yeah.
I think anyone who's leaving that area is not likely to go out to Kohler, to come down Kohler. Yeah.
Not
Okay.
unless there's an emergency that's blocking that southern route off, and that's why the purpose of having that secondary access. So MASIPA was 2021-11, and it provided information and documentation to propose self-imposed mitigation measures for parks and recreation impacts, transportation impacts, and for school facility impacts. Based on submitted paperwork, County Building and Planning Department issued a SEPA determination of non-significance on June 17, 2021, with comments due by July 1. Several comments were received, which were included in the packet. An amended DNS was issued on June 21st, 2021. And that was due to where we just listed out additional clarifications regarding the specific application based on comments received from the city and things. We added a few extra clarifications. A determination of non-significance is issued when there's it doesn't mean there aren't conditions for a plat or a proposal. It means that any conditions are already covered under existing law. When you do a mitigated DNS, that means that there's things that are above and beyond or special to the case that aren't generally covered. Determination received. So the 35 or 37.5 acres with frontage along Burns and connects to Whiskey River Road to the north. The developer is proposing that new residential parcels be provided with irrigation water, municipal water, private septic systems for each lot, and Franklin County Fire District 3 fire hydrants. The water will be provided by the city for both the fire hydrants and the potable water. Septic systems will be established for each lot through the health department's process. The proposed plat is in the Franklin PUD service area for electrical power service, and Pasco School District serves the area. The Franklin County Planning Department recommends, that should say commission, recommends that the Board of County Commissioners approve application sub 2021-05 with 6 suggested findings of fact. And that's where I did that miscount. I'm trying to correct this. And 6 suggested conditions of approval. And the recommended language for the motion is correct with the proper numbers. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, commissioners?
Derek, this is a closed record hearing, so unless it's part of the record, don't go there. But is there anything in the plat or in any of the materials that speaks to easements for public access to shoreline or river areas?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thanks.
I have no questions.
Derek, on the DAHP, they're saying that this is a high probability of cultural artifacts.
Correct.
So enlighten us a little bit about there if they find something.
What happens is they have what's known as inadvertent discovery protocols.
Mm-hmm.
So they're required under state law to, if they come across something that is ancestral or prehistoric or something along those lines, they stop all operations. They bring in the appropriate bodies. Usually I believe it's somebody from WSU, the archaeologists. But they can hire any of the state licensed or certified archaeologists to come in and survey the site. If it's bones or something along those lines, then the county coroner is brought in to identify the bones. This is active farmland and or residential. Therefore, it's a disturbed site already pretty significantly. It's been active farmland for decades from what I understand. So in those circumstances, staff generally goes with the inadvertent discovery as opposed to say raw land that's not really been, or it's been a real long time since there's been any activity on it. Under those circumstances, we may request or recommend that there's more advanced study done, maybe a report done or something like that. And then on others, for example, Douglas and Kohler, there's a known site, so those actually require a permit issued by DAHP, and the applicant is in the process of doing that for those. We got those applications last week, and that's a process that's just handled between them. They'll set up the protocols, and then they can't commence work until all that work has been done out there. But yeah,
Okay.
there's a known site out for those,
Yeah.
but down here south, that said, the likelihood is due to proximity, there may be things that are discovered. If so, they have to implement those inadvertent protocols.
The other question I have is the memo from Public Works Department. It says, number 7, that prior to final plat approval, all roads must be complete to county standards. Now, those are interior roads. What about the exterior to get all of those residents to and from the main artery?
That
What are
is,
we doing there?
that is the, I want to say it's 579, but there's a fee that's charged for each lot that goes into a pool that has been charged for all those
Okay.
different developments. And then usually what happens is that those dollars are leveraged to get additional dollars to actually do the build out.
Okay. And are we planning on making these roads 4-lane?
That
I don't
would,
see anything in here on this. as
yeah,
far
they
as-
wouldn't necessarily be pulling that trigger now. It's a matter of when they hit the required thresholds associated with the expansion.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
looking at this map though, with this expansion, with the other expansions, we're talking a lot of traffic.
And again, the planning department relies on the expertise of the public works department for making those recommendations. If we were at that threshold, they would be either charging a different rate or implementing that. I'm not sure where it sits on the actual plans.
Are these fees that you're talking about impact fees? Is that what they're
They're
called?
mitigation fees.
Mitigation fees, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I got. Is there any other discussion? With that, I will close the closed record hearing and entertain a motion.
The motion to approve 2021-174.
Can you confirm that's the correct resolution number? Karen? Okay.
2021-174, subdivision 2021-05, Spencer Estates Phase 4.
Okay, second.
There's been a motion and a second discussion. Hearing no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay, with that, we move down to public comment. Is there any public comment? Keith, anybody on the phone?
No, sir. I would just say for the record that I did receive a phone call during the week from a citizen. She indicated her support for the county commissioners doing more in terms of mask mandates and vaccine requirements. And she left it at that. I told her that I would get that on the record for her.
Okay, thank you.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
You were just visiting about the transportation in this vicinity. I don't know if you're aware, but the city of Pasco has been working on a transportation master plan for the city, and didn't know if that he was aware of that, but they're, I think, about a month, maybe a little bit more from presenting that to city council. They've been talking about the arterials and the collectors and so forth, the road network. And so think it would be good. I encouraged the city in a meeting earlier this week to reach out to the county and collaborate with the county on this master plan, and think it would definitely be valuable. We've talked about it before, that we have a problem now, and the problem hasn't gone away and is not going away unless we do something about it. And so to look a little bit longer term than we have, there is a collection of fees, as Mr. Bratton said, in this area for some of these impacts that are caused by these subdivisions. But as leaders of the county and leaders of the city are working on just collaboration with our local governing bodies would be really helpful. We need to address this, because with some of these big projects that have been announced lately and the subdivisions that are happening, we need to get our arms around this traffic issue, and would encourage the county to work with the city on the master plan that's underway now. And something interesting that happened earlier this week, just interest that you might have. I interviewed a young man, and in his resume said that he had been out of the workforce and been working for himself for 7 years. And so as we visited there, I said, well, this is a little bit unusual to come back into the workforce when you've been running your own business. And he stated that the reason was because his wife was going to lose her job where their medical benefits came from. So I explored that a little bit, and she's a nurse, and with the governor's mandate on October the 18th, she'll lose her job unless she acquiesces to the governor's edict of, you will do what the government says so. And so I found that really interesting. We all know people in the medical community, and I've visited with a few about that, and they share that concern. The percentages are pretty scary. This is a very real disease or a very real virus that is affecting our community, and we absolutely need to educate and our community to engage and protect ourselves and each other. But for our government to tell you what you will and will not do is scary. That's the beginnings of what we see outside of our borders, such as Cuba and the way they do. You will do what I say, and that's not the way we need to do it. So certainly think carefully about what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment?
George Dockstetter, Self Landing Road. I appreciate you bringing up the fact that FutureWise sued to stop our growth management, or whatever you want to call it, expanding the city limits. But why should we let an environmental group from California dictate to us what we're going to do? I would highly recommend the county commissioners withdraw from the Growth Management Act and tell the people on the other side, we're going to build out the way we want to, the way our citizens want us to, not the way some college-educated evergreen planner thinks that we should grow and worry about what we're doing over here. Let them go back and worry about Seattle that doesn't belong, Pierce County that doesn't belong, Snohomish County that doesn't belong. Let's get out of it. The benefits are not to us. They're to the politicians and the bureaucrats in Olympia and other parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
We'd have an explanation of what the growth management, us being in growth management, what that means and what it would mean if we were to leave.
Keith?
Yeah. That's a question being asked is
That's a long answer.
what requires us to be in the Growth Management Act, and what would be the consequences if we were to try to. Franklin County participated or became involved in the Growth Management Act many years ago. They were at the time given the option. We could, I don't know what it would take to withdraw. That's a question that would require me to do some research, but it would require us to have some pretty major modifications to our county zoning and county planning ordinances and take on quite a bit of work that we have not otherwise done. It's not quite as simple as just telling Olympia to pound sand, as much as that sentiment is shared in Franklin County because of the onerous requirements of the Growth Management Act. The consequences of a change may be as significant. So rather than get into the details, I would invite you to contact me and we could probably have a more intelligent conversation about what the details of that looks like. But it would be fairly challenging, but it could be done. Derek, I'm looking to you as kind of a...
Keith, this is Matt.
Yes, Matt, go ahead.
What I will say is we cannot, under state law, opt out. We opted in. The commissioners back in the day, I believe, chose to opt in because we were close to the population limits. They knew that we were going to be over the population limits, which require us to plan under GMA, and they took advantage of that to get the state money. Right now, we meet the population limits by quite a bit, and under state law, we are required to plan under GMA. We are not allowed to opt out. They did allow an opt-out period, I believe, in 2000 and I want to say around 15, but that was for counties that didn't meet the population limits and chose to opt in when they didn't have to. So it allowed legislators allowed a very small window for those counties. But for our county, we are way above the population limits that are defined in the statutes under state law. And we do not have the ability or the opportunity to opt out. Now, even if we tried, we would run into all kinds of other legal problems that would go above and beyond future-wise or anything else. So I just want to put that out there. We can't opt out.
I do have one caller on the line.
Good.
Too, whenever you're...
Well, we're ready for it. We'll take the caller first.
Good morning. Is this Wanda?
Yes, it is. First, I was just thinking that it would be great to have some sort of public presentation on how this whole growth management thing happened, and if there's a way to change state laws for our legislators to be able to opt out. I don't know. But anyhow, just that thought. I also wanted to speak to the vaccinations and the face mask mandates that may be coming. I have many nurse, doctor, and hospital staff friends. So I do concur what Didier said about staff shortages. Now, one nurse was telling me they're talking about forcing staff to do overtime. And they're also offering a $500 day bonus just to show up. So first of all, I just wanted to say epidemiologists tend to see pandemics from only one perspective, and that is a data-driven perspective. But when you look deeper to the numbers, it becomes clear that it was actually the government's response that exacerbated this virus. Who we really needed to be hearing from were immunologists. Not one epidemiologist, nobody, not one scientist that was in the government did I ever hear face this virus from an offensive perspective. It was all defensive. They locked people up, forced people to wear face masks, all which weaken the immune system, by the way, and which is why I always wore my mask under my nose and I never stayed home. So where was that epidemiologist when it was at the beginning? He should have been giving people advice on how to strengthen their immune system instead of hiding in their houses. The state government insisted on putting still contagious patients in with the seniors. We saw in King County in Italy in January and February why that would be a bad move. Why didn't they move heaven and earth? Why didn't this epidemiologist move heaven and earth to use the old Kennewick General Hospital as a recovering center? with strict hygiene for the workers. But instead, the mostly immigrant staff brought the virus home to their families, who then brought it to work, which is meat processors, other processors, and lunchrooms, and out from there, including doctors' offices. Then, when I look at the opioid and how the FDA and the best experts encourage pain management with new opioids that were not addictive, except that 60 to 75,000 deaths a year from overdoses and addiction, we learned that was wrong. Then, face masks, which there's been no test that has ever, or study that's ever done that showed they're effective against airborne viruses, are being forced. Yes, we were not allowed to use chloroquine, which in 2013, according to the government's own website, it is shown to cure viruses, SARS and COVID-type viruses, if given in the beginning stages. And yet that was pretty much outlawed. And we were told to stay held up in our homes. When I see opposing doctors and sentiments to that, epidemiologists are silent. Again, I don't have any trust for my government. So when I hear these so-called medical experts tell us that these vaccines are perfect, when just this last month, two of my friends, a married couple, got the vaccine and 2 weeks later ended up in the hospital on a ventilator, I'm sorry, but trust is like a vase. Once you break it, you have to put it together piece by piece. And the more times that trust is broken, the harder it is to put together. I have no trust in these so-called experts because everything at every juncture, they have exacerbated this virus. They have made things worse. They have destroyed our economy and our country. And this entire mess would have been made better if we were in the 18th century without all these forced mandates. And that's what I have to say to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask that we start invoking our 3-minute rule. It's been with us all along. We just seem to forget sometimes to start the timer.
Keith, are you keeping track of that or you want me to?
I have not, but I will.
Okay. I think we have another public comment here.
Certainly keep me to my 3 minutes, since we seem to run over our allotment of public input so often. I wondered if we could request a presentation. I know this would take some time to prepare, but if we could have a presentation on what the advantages of being a part of the Growth Management Act. I appreciate what Mr. Mahoney said, but I disagree with it as far as we don't have an option. If we don't have an option, what are we here for? If the 3 commissioners here that were voted and elected by the people to represent them, if you have no ability, then what's our purpose here? That's fascinating to me that we see things in that way. But to have a presentation on why we're a part of it and what the advantages are of being a part of it and why we need to be a part of it. I mean, excuse me for being frank, but who the hell is the state to tell us what to do here in Franklin County? I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I do mean it literally. We could make excuses for days on why we can't do things. And it seems to be that that's what we do very regularly. We give 86 reasons of why we can't do things. Well, I can't do that because of the growth hearings, blah, blah, blah. It's amazing to me that that's our standard go-to is why we can't do things. So don't know if it pleases the commissioners, but I think that would be helpful if we were to have an understanding of this Growth Management Act and why we are a part of it and what the advantages are to Franklin County. Thank you.
So Keith, what do you think? Is there a possibility of putting together a presentation on that?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, the MRSC organization already has quite a bit of information on their website related to the Growth Management Act. Excuse me. It's available to the public, but we could certainly put something together that's more specific to Franklin County.
Because I have reported on this before, and of course I was in this boardroom when they elected to put us into Growth Management Act, and I was against it. I didn't see the plus in being in it. I know that there was funds allocated to it, and I felt like that was the carrot that dangled us right into this trap. And I am not in favor of Growth Management Act. Never have been, never will be.
Yeah,
Like
it's
like
certainly,
has been stated, we're elected officers here. And if we are being overridden by the state as far as what we do here in our local county, then what good are we? And why are we elected? That's a very good question.
So, Mr. Chairman, let me, since you posed some interesting questions there, let me speak to that for a minute. First off, I think possibly you might be conflating the Voluntary Stewardship Program, VSP,
In the
With the-
GMA,
with the Growth Management Hearings Board. I
Yeah.
heard you say that you were in this room when we went into GMA, and that was, of course, many decades ago. So I think you meant the Voluntary Stewardship Program. Second thing is, while we're doing presentations and all of us getting up to speed and educated, I think one of the most valuable ones we might have is a presentation on county authority and where we fit in the understanding that we are actually an extension of state government. We are not a sovereign entity as a county. And as much as there are many things that I would like to do from this bench, we don't have that authority. Now, can we elect people to the House and the Senate in Olympia and ask them to make these changes? Absolutely. And many people in this room, myself included, have worked to get people in Olympia that we think would move things in the direction we'd like to see. But until that happens, we have to follow the law. So if we're going to start having workshops, and I'm on board if that's what you want to do, let's also have one about county authority, where it comes from, and what the limits and bounds are, so that people have a reasonable understanding of what they can expect us to do and not do. Thanks.
is there any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on down to office business. I believe we have one voucher.
Yes, one voucher. We move for approval of fund expenditures in a total amount of $34,264.50 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by 2 representatives of the auditor's office and the county administrator.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Takes us down to consent agenda, and I believe there are 2 on the consent agenda. See, Mr. Killian in the,
2 items.
okay, good. There was a discussion before the meeting. There may only be 1, so we have 2 consent agenda items.
Move for approval of consent as presented, 2 items.
Been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Takes us down to administration office business, Keith.
yes, sir. Thank you. I've got one item that I'm going to request an executive session to discuss briefly with possible action after that. Before I get there, I wanted to visit just briefly about the possibility of our next night meeting. We had our last one in June. We generally try to do one of those per quarter. So I'm looking at the calendar, and the first Tuesday in September will be the 7th. I wanted to know if that would be an appropriate night for a night meeting. It's the day after Labor Day. Sometimes in the past, we have not had a Tuesday meeting, but I don't know that that's going to be a conflict for anybody.
September 7th, you're saying?
Karen will be gone, but we can probably backfill. Yeah, with Shirley.
But it is September 7th that you're
September the
looking at?
7th, yeah.
Okay.
If that's okay, we'll probably do our night meeting that night. And that would include an overview and presentation on the Rescue Act, and how we plan on using that, if that's appropriate.
So I encourage the other commissioners to look at their schedules and see if that'll work.
Works for me.
It works for me.
Just, Commissioner, you mentioned at the port meeting discussion of insurance going up. We are seeing that across the board in all forms of insurance, with the medical insurance that we provide as a benefit to our county employees. We're going to see a significant increase in those rates. Our commitment to the risk pool, a lot of those rates are increasing, and right now we're in the middle of a discussion with the Juvenile Justice Center. Darrell Banks is looking for a medical insurance provider. We've been told that the current provider will no longer continue to be able to serve that facility. So we're looking to find a replacement, and all of the replacements we've talked to so far are going to be considerably more expensive. So know that that's on the horizon, that all kinds of insurance costs are increasing exponentially. A lot of inflation in medical costs and liability costs. With that, that's all the business that I have. You have one more public comment section, then I will request an executive session.
Okay. With that, we'll move down to the last public comment. Is there any public comment? Anybody on the phone, Keith?
No.
Anybody in the room? And with that, then I guess we'll move into executive session.
Okay. The agenda requests an executive session under RCW 42.30.1101I for potential litigation. The prosecuting attorney is unavailable this morning, and so I would like to wait till he is available. So I'm going to postpone or request a postponement of that particular executive session till next week.
Okay.
But I would like to have a 10-minute executive session under RCW 42.30.110, paragraph 1, subparagraph C, on real estate sales, and would ask that the board, myself, the clerk, and Jen Johnson from the prosecuting attorneys be allowed to participate.
Okay. So we'll be going into executive session for 10 minutes. And you said Jen will be joining us?
Yeah, she's on. Jen, you on the phone?
Yes, I'm on the phone. Do you want me to hang? Is everyone hanging up? And
Okay, we've come out of executive session and we're back into regular session. Is there any other business for the good of the board?
Are you?
Just one
I do have
observation.
one item.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to make an observation. We had a caller today who expressed some pretty strong opinions on the medical community, and I certainly am not going to say that I have deep firsthand knowledge of why people are leaving, not continuing to serve. But I do know that if you look at the op-ed in the Herald recently, you'll see that a large contingent of the physicians, registered nurses, and others at Cadleck publicly came out and all together expressed their support for vaccination of healthcare workers. Not taking a position on the governor's action or whether it's a reach or not, just saying the people that are working there in that department at Cadleck came out publicly and said they're in favor of it and support it.
Mr. Johnson, you had something else?
Yeah, I apologize because I didn't check with my staff before I spoke earlier about a night meeting. Didn't realize that we have some staff missing. I'm wondering if we could move that to the 14th, the following Tuesday, for
Okay.
our night meeting rather than the 7th.
Since we don't need to announce it this week, why don't you come back to us next week with a better date after you've had a chance to
Okay.
vet it?
Thank you.
We got plenty of time to clarify, but yeah, I think that would
Well,
be fine.
and the only reason I needed to bring it up was we have to post a notice on certain pieces of our Recovery Act issue. So I want to make sure we've got time to do that. That's why I'm going to ask to move it back a week rather than, yeah, we'll do it on, we'll bring a
And it-
proposal back next week, but
It doesn't necessarily have to be a Tuesday.
correct.
Okay,
We'll work out the schedule and bring that back. Thank you.
all
That's I
righty.
had.
So with that, is there any other business for the good of the county? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.